I'm going to talk about Server Checkin, a service I started a couple years ago, and how I built it, how it's running, how I marketed it, all that kind of stuff. Basically, give a general overview and a demo of it, partly to make you guys all want to buy it, because then I'll get more money, but also just because it's a good small project that I did that really touched on a lot of different parts of what some Drupal projects would do. It's like a small application. It had a kind of a project life cycle. It had to do with marketing your site and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit about me. Some of you guys know me pretty well. Some of you guys don't know me at all. Um, I'm Gearling guy everywhere. So Twitter, Facebook, Google, Drupal.org, everywhere. I'm currently working as a senior application developer at Mercy. At Mercy, we do a lot of big sites. Mercy.net and Bagot Street are the two biggest ones, but we also have a lot of smaller sites for different clients or different internal clients to do different kinds of interesting things for healthcare. And I also have owned Midwestern Mac LLC, which is my little company that I run Server Checkin under and some other things. And it's Server Checkin is more of a side project for me, but it's one of the most fun side projects I've had, and I'll talk more about how that is as we go. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the service, how I use Drupal, and actually how I use Node.js. You thought you were coming to a Drupal camp, but I'll teach you a little bit about Node as well. Notes on hosting and marketing the service, and then also I'll take some questions at the end. We can talk about it. One of the things that I've found in every presentation is most of the time my presentation is pretty boring, but the questions at the end are awesome. So we'll see how you guys do. So one question I get asked every time I show somebody Server Checkin is, why did you build another server uptime monitor? There's literally hundreds of them. And I actually use Pingdom to monitor Server Checkin. Pingdom is probably like the bread and butter software as a service, uptime monitoring, website monitoring, user monitoring service out there. So there's Pingdom, there's Uptime Robot is another popular one. I think they have a free plan. A lot of them have like free plans with 1 to 5 servers and then paid plans where you pay for text messages, all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I noticed with pretty much all of these is they're either relatively expensive for what you get, or you have to be nickel and dimed with so many different things that it's hard to know what you're getting really. And then a few of them too, it's like the most you can do is 5-minute checks or 10-minute checks or something, and that's not really helpful for some projects where it has to be up all the time. For a personal blog, that might not be an issue to have 10 minutes of downtime. But if I have a service that's being used by a lot of people and is, I need to make sure I'm getting that 99.9% uptime. I want a service that's able to show me minute by minute what's going on. So Server Checkin was my answer to that for me. I wanted something that was a few bucks a month or less, which there's only a couple services like that out there, because I really don't care about tons of features or anything. The main thing is I just wanted something to tell me if my server was down, and then tell me again when it's back up. And another thing that I really wanted was an actual text message to my phone through SMS, not a lot of services that offer free SMS. It's not actually SMS. They send it to an email address that goes to your phone that can come from random phone numbers. So on my phone, I have it text me with a special ringtone and a special vibration pattern. So if I'm in a meeting or something and I just feel the little SOS vibration, I know one of my servers down, and then I'll check it and see which one it is, all that kind of stuff. A lot of the services offer SMS, but it's like pay as you go or it's really expensive. So I wanted something cheap, reliable, and very easy. So I built this for about 3 or 4 months, was testing it out on some of my servers, and then launched it in December 2012. And I'll give a quick little demo and overview of it so that you guys can see what it is. Let me pop this over here to this monitor. So, Server Checkin. One thing about it is, so far I haven't built a mobile app because most people are happy with the way the service is built. You basically sign in, add some servers, and I don't care if you ever log in again because I just want to tell you if they're up or down. But if you do log in, you get a few nice features, like it'll give you a percentage uptime, the number of outages in the past month here on their little dashboard, and a little sparkline graph. Then if you go into a server like Apple, let's see if our internet's happy. Okay. Then it'll give you a few more details. It'll give you graphs of the latency, how long it takes to download the page, a list of outages, and as time has gone on, I've added a couple more things here and there, but really, I'm focusing on making sure server check-in itself is up all the time and making sure it's robust and reliable and fast. So other services have tons of features you can add and tons of kinds of checks. I'm really focused on is it up or down? Is it checking a website, a server, or content on a website, basically? And I might add a couple new things, but as long as it doesn't take away from the experience. So for every server, like I said, you can just check if it's responding with a 200 OK, or you can check for content. Just add in a string from the text somewhere that you can check for, which is better than just a 200 OK, because a lot of services, like as I found with my current employer, sometimes default configurations of firewalls and things, if there's a problem, it'll still respond with a 200, but an error message, which is not really the way HTTP works, but that happens, so it's good to check for the content. And also, you can make sure that your site's not hacked. Sometimes if your site is hacked, then the content changes. And you can also just ping a server by putting in an IP address or name. And you can do 1, 5, or 10-minute check intervals. And right now, you can notify yourself by email and or text message. Or neither, as is the case with this. I don't want to be, with this test account, I don't want thousands of emails for all these different services that go up and down. And interesting aside, I found that there are, even the biggest name companies do have outages for a minute, 2 minutes. And a lot of times it's DNS related or route related, but, don't be ashamed if you don't have 100.000% uptime. Nobody has that, really. Even Bing here, which is 100 right now, in the past they've had outages. It happens. It's just most people don't ever see it because there's billions of visits per day. So anyway, so that's an overview of server check-in. I'll also show really quick, it has a blog with some interesting information about different things about PHP, Ansible. I'll get into other things. And also, if you're coming in the first time, it has the sign-up form is integrated with Stripe. It's a custom form using Stripe's JavaScript to do the validation. And that's the basic thing. The text messages are sent through Twilio, and the payments are through Stripe. And then there's some other services I use too, like Discus for these comments. And then the last thing I want to show on the site itself is everything is responsive. So when you start narrowing things down, well, I should say everything except for the latency graph right now is responsive. I really should check these things before the presentation. But anyway, it's cool. It goes through the uptime. So anyway, but the forms all work pretty well. Everything is pretty much responsive, I should say. And that's helped me, some people have asked for an app, and then I just tell them, you know what, this is such a simple service. I don't want to maintain an app and spend less time developing the actual service. Sometimes just having a good responsive design is good enough for you. So let's get back to, whoops, my mouse is lost. There it is. All right, so let's get back to the presentation. So as I said, I use Twilio, Stripe, and Discus. Twilio for SMS. It also does phone calls, but I disabled that because I don't want to be calling people and saying, your site is down. I use Stripe for payment processing. I originally was going to use PayPal, but Stripe had just come on the market about 1.5 years prior. And up to the time that I started building a site, it was still kind of like, is it going to be around? Is it stable, reliable? But by the time that I was doing the payment processing part, Stripe was pretty awesome, and that was a good decision. Stripe has been unbelievably easy to use, easy to integrate, easy to work with. The dashboard is excellent. Just everything about Stripe has been awesome. Whereas with PayPal, everything about PayPal is almost not even you'd almost not want to punish somebody with it. It's so bad. So anyhow, and then I use Discus for comments. That's just helped. Their spam moderation and their display and their responsive design and all that. It's better than me trying to redesign another comments form. I've done so many comment styling in Drupal. I was just like, forget it. For this one, I'm using Discus. It's easy. And then also, you saw the graphs on the site, both on the server pages and on that dashboard page. It uses Flot, and Flot is awesome. If you've ever tried to do graphs in HTML, Flot is responsive. It uses jQuery. It's fast. You can do live graphing. So like if you have a service that's pinging something over Ajax, you can have graphing that's like updating on the page and moving. You can do almost any kind of graph or pie chart or chart in Flot easy. I mean, as easy as it can be. Graphs are always a little interesting sometimes. And then also for the emails, instead of trying to write up my own email template, I just used MailChimp because one of my principles in my own coding is like, if somebody else did it and did it well, why am I going to do it again? And MailChimp has really robust, tested in every single client on the planet with every service templates. So I just used one of theirs, customized it for Server Checkin. Because really, I'm not an email marketing company. I just want to have a good formatted email to go out to people when their servers are done. And of course, I'm using Drupal for the site. This is, to many people in the web development, application development industry, this is like anathema. How could you use some heavyweight, horrible CMS that runs in PHP? And really, for me, I actually started doing the site a little bit in Node. Back at that time, Express was like a new thing, and it was interesting. But and then I also thought about doing it in Symfony or some other framework. But when I thought about it, like even if I were an expert in one of those systems, I wanted this thing up quick because I just wanted it for my own needs, really. At that time, I didn't know it would be useful to other people so much. And Drupal let me build everything you saw there, except for the checking part, in like half a day. So I had all the content types set up, and I had the relationship set up. The payment service stuff was all done, except for the final little, like, what happens when you click buy. So that's the power of Drupal, really, for me. It's quick, easy, and you get it done, and it works. Scalability is another issue sometimes, and I'll get into that. But anyway, so for Drupal, I just made a custom theme I have for Midwestern Mac, the little LLC I run. I have a base theme that has like the button styles and the other kind of stuff. It's kind of like using Bootstrap for everything. I use this base theme for everything I'm doing here, and it helps me get up and running quick. And it has 4 custom modules with some custom code. There's a base module that does the little glue stuff, helps with making the forms look a little prettier, adds a little JavaScript here and there. There's a billing module that does a little bit of this Stripe integration. So when you click the buy button, what happens, and it builds that little form. And it also shows like invoices and payments and things in their user profile. Notifications module does the notifications through Twilio. So when a server goes down, it handles what happens in that case, like where it gets sent. And then there's another module for the check server management. And this one's the newest one that I've written for it. And it just basically integrates with the Node.js system that I'll show you. Some of the modules I used on the site that are essential: views for the content listings. I just wrote a couple plugins for the special things like the graphs. It was easier to do that than to use some of the contributed modules, and saved a lot of processor time, because sometimes like with those Flot graphs, if you use the contrib module that does those Flot views integrations, it basically loads like 10,000 data points and then filters them, and it takes like 3 seconds to load a page. That's not acceptable to me. I like 0.2 seconds, 0.3 seconds. So I just built a custom plugin that prints out those things in a view. In Elijah Cron, I don't think I've built a site that has more than a few hundred visitors a day without it in the past couple of years. It lets you tell Drupal to not run certain things, like clear out the entire whatever table and clear out all the watchdog every hour or every 10 minutes. It lets you filter, I only want to do system level tasks at 2 a.m. or something like that. So it's helpful for scalability so that your site doesn't go down every hour when it's doing crazy amounts of cleanup work. Discus, because Drupal's commenting is good, but it takes a little time to get it to work well with your workflow. Discus, it has everything working. It emails you the comments. It integrates with social. It lets people log in however they want. So I liked that. Boost. I've been thinking about using Varnish at some point, but for now, Boost is great for my site because it's basically install and you're done. For a lot of smaller sites, I've been using Boost because it's like that. You can use it with shared hosting or whatever, and it just caches everything to an HTML file. And Apache is great at serving HTML files. So for non-logged in users, it's great. For the blog, every once in a while, one of my blog posts, the one on PHP, it's not so bad. That one got 7,000 or 8,000 hits in a day from Reddit. It got onto the LOL PHP subreddit and was being trashed there, which I expected because people that don't like PHP for some reason vehemently hate PHP. But it was, the server had no hiccup. And in fact, at this point, I actually have a new infrastructure that I'm going to be moving towards. At this point, server Checkin is actually running on the same DigitalOcean VPS as 17 other sites, all of them getting over 10,000 page views, page views per day. A few of them less, of course, but I mean, that server, most things are cached, so it doesn't matter. Apache can serve billions of page views with no issue, as long as you're not bootstrapping all of Drupal. So Boost is awesome, highly recommended, and will be even better in Drupal 8 for reasons you'll find out later. And then Honeypot, because I hate spam. So with any service I've ran where people can sign up for it, there's tons of user registration spam. Even if you like have it so they sign up and they get blackholed, there's still tons and tons of user registrations. Honeypot basically wipes that out. Drupal.org uses it. I've used it on a lot of different sites. Like one of the services I used, Flocknote, we had like 5,000 signups a day. After enabling Honeypot, it was down to like 300. And those 300 were human beings in different spam countries that were spamming everything. Not spam countries, countries that have lots of spammers. So anyway, those are the modules I was using.
And you created Honeypot.
Yes.
I created Honeypot, yes. But I'm the most humble person in the room, so I won't admit that. Anyway, so the next thing, I'm using all these modules. I have some custom modules. And when I first built the service, Drupal has a queue API. Yes. Oh, somebody is calling for me.
Yes. Okay,
That's what we learned.
let's all
Don't think about that.
Okay, everybody all at once. Oh, but you're gonna have to tether through your phone, or else you can't do it because the Wi-Fi is so bad. Actually, Washington University has a guest network that's working fine for me.
I
switched to
there.
Sorry, I've been arrested.
There was Jeff in handcuffs.
No. Anyway, for those of you viewing this after the fact, I was not arrested, but there was a police officer. It's a WashU police officer. We're not supposed to prop open the front door. So anyway, we're good. For server Checkin, I originally built it with queue API, which in Drupal it's a reliable, solid, fast queue system. You put some things that are to be done in the list, and then you later on during cron pull those things out and do them. And it worked fine for a little while, especially when it was just me on the site. I had like 15 servers that I was checking, and so maybe there were 50 checks per minute. No big deal. There's even some cool ways you can do it using Drush. You can use concurrent queue batch operations, so you can like have 5 different workers pulling things out of the queue at the same time, or 10 or 20, however many your server can support. But it doesn't really scale that well, and it also uses MySQL as a database backend for the queue. And you can use different ones too, but it started getting clunky when I was trying to figure out ways to do hundreds or thousands of checks per minute rather than tens. And the other issue I had with it was servers were being checked one by one, and as time was going on, I let people start signing up, and I had some users, and then it would get filled up to the point where people wouldn't get checks except for like every 18 minutes, and then another user signed up and it went to 20 minutes. So it wasn't keeping up with the service's growth at all. And at that point, because of these restrictions, I set a 10-minute check interval maximum so that there wouldn't be too much load on the checking system. And there's actually a couple other Drupal systems that do server checks that use the queue API and batch. And they work great if you're just doing a few servers, but once you get into hundreds, thousands, that's when you start running into big issues. This next graphic is also controversial in that it doesn't represent inherent flaws in PHP or inherent successes in Node.js, but it does highlight something that's easier in one language and a little harder in the other language. In PHP, it's very easy to do serial processing where You get a bunch of tasks, and then you pick one, and you take it, you do it, and you finish it. Then you go up and pick one, and you take it, you do it, and you finish it. So it goes through a serial line like that. And PHP can do asynchronous processing, like this Node.js graphic. But it's harder, and it's not the default, and you're not going to get as much support because not as many people do things like that. So I was using PHP for it, and I was running into some issues with trying to get it to do more than one thing at once. But Node.js was built basically to be asynchronous by default. So you have callbacks and events, and you can take a whole group of things, get them all going, and then as each one finishes it does the rest of the work. It holds the information about itself inside of Node's engine. So you can do that more easily. So I switched to Node.js, and for the checking, this allowed a lot of nice things. It let me start scaling quite a bit. I now have, I think, 6, 7, 8, I don't know how many servers doing the checks. And they're all checking. What they do is right now they grab 100 servers per 10 seconds, and they start checking them in the Node.js app. And then once it finishes that group of 100, it pumps them back into Drupal, and then Drupal writes it out to the database, and then I can do the rest of the views and all that kind of stuff. And if one's down, then Drupal will send the notifications, all that kind of stuff. And what this enabled for me, which a lot of services for their low-powered plans, you can't do 1-minute checks, you have to do 10, 5, 10, or 20-minute, is I can do 1-minute checks for everyone, which a lot of people are asking for. But if you have a site that goes up and down a lot, or if you have shared hosting, it's probably not a good idea to do 1-minute checks, because you'll get sometimes like down, up, because that's how those hosts are. You get what you pay for. But I could do it now. I could let people do that. Every single account can do that without having any scaling problems. So my current architecture for server check-in basically has the main server over on DigitalOcean, and then it has as many servers as I want. I just pictured 6. I think I'm up to 7 or 8 now, but I can spin up 10, 100, 200. The limit then would become the Drupal database gets overloaded with tons of checks, but then I can just scale that side a little more. But all these servers, they just grab a batch of servers, process it, and then send it back to the Drupal server. So usually within 30 seconds to a minute of a server being down, server check-in will know. It passes that back to the main server. The main server says, okay, this server thinks it's down, but I want to be sure, so it sends another check back to another server to verify. Then if it verifies from that server, then it sends the down notification. So that's another thing. If you're building a server checking service, you should do that verify check, because a lot of times, like, you'd be surprised, this server might be offline for a certain portion of the internet for 10 minutes, then this server, then that one. And that's another thing that a lot of checking services, they might be using one hosting provider for all their check servers. That's not really worthwhile, because you'd be surprised how often one portion of the internet just blacks out for a little while, and then comes back, and then another one. So use different regions, different hosting providers. That's very helpful for this kind of thing. And speaking of the hosting providers, one thing that I didn't want to have happen is me maintaining hundreds of dollars of servers for server check-in. So I found this website a few years back called Low End Box, and there's another forum that goes with it, Low End Talk, and it basically highlights a lot of services that have cheap VPSs that you do, like you can do minimal jobs, like let's say you have a pinging thing or a little application that logs something or whatever. You wouldn't run an enterprise website on one of these. But it's great for server check-in, because I don't care, if we go back here, I don't care if 3 of these servers are down, because the other 3 can still handle the load. So I have all these servers running with cheap plans. They go up and down whenever they want, and I get notifications when they go up and down from the other servers. And my total hosting costs for the year is only a few $100, including the DigitalOcean server. So it's not that big of a burden price-wise. And setting them up is easy too, because everything that I have is managed using Ansible. I'm actually writing a book called Ansible for DevOps, so if you want to go buy that book, that'd be great too. And Ansible, what it does is basically you define a configuration for a server, you define how to deploy an application to that server, and you can log into that server through Ansible, or a bunch of servers through Ansible. Just run commands on them, or run a playbook, which is a set of commands, deployment instructions, whatever you want. So when I want to go back in here and add stl1.servercheckin. Takes about 30 seconds for that server to be provisioned. I just buy it from the hosting provider. When I get the IP address and credentials, I log in with Ansible. It puts my private key on it, turns off the password-based login, adds my account, deploys the app to the server, installs Node.js, boots up Node.js. It's done. It's ready to go. And then it registers that server with server check-in in about 30, 45 seconds. So, this kind of service, server check-in, would not really be, it's not really profitable to me. I make a little money on it, but it's really just enough to tinker around. And really, it's what got me into Ansible, which I love. I've been using Ansible a lot lately, and I'm actually going to present on that at DrupalCon if you guys are there. And it's also introduced me to a lot of scalability issues that have helped me elsewhere too. So, early on I said this is a dog fooding project. It's really a project that I've tried to learn a lot with from a lot of different areas and angles. So, if you guys, even if there's a service you like, but if you want it cheaper, if you want it different, go ahead and tinker. Don't spend 1 million hours and $1 million on it, but tinker and learn some new things. So the last point I have on this too is it's a cheap service. It's cheaper than any other paid service for server checking that I've found, besides the free ones, which there's a few good free ones, but most of the free ones are pretty junky, and they sell your email to marketing lists, and they don't do actual SMSs. I also use pretty cheap servers, with the exception of the DigitalOcean one that runs the main site. And I deploy changes on a whim. I think 3 or 4 days ago I found one little bug, and I just coded it, ran the test, deployed it. And on server check-in, the main site has had 99.98% uptime over the past year. And there's a link here too in the presentation if you download it. You can click on that link, go off to Pingdom, see that. I'm not lying. Even though most statistics, 67% are made up on the spot. And a lot of people are surprised, how can you have rapid changes across many servers with whatever kind of complicated application and not have downtime? It's because everything is automated and everything is tested. So that's a plug for the idea of not necessarily test-driven development, but tested development, and making sure you automate processes. Ansible has been key to all that. Before that, if I would log into 7 servers and make sure I do the exact same 7 steps, I know I'd miss a step or I'd mess up a file or something. And Ansible at the end of it shows a report here's what happened on every server. And if I see one of these servers changed but the other ones didn't, I know something's up with that server and I can go in and check that. So, for anyone, you can run things with almost 100% uptime, get those 5 nines, and still not have huge processes or huge corporations involved in it. So the last little bit is about how I launched it, how I marketed it, and I have done, in my opinion, very little. And I'm sure if I spent a full-time job marketing it, I could convince people that didn't need it to buy it. Which some of these services, they sell these services that people don't really need to people, and then I don't like doing that. I don't feel honest that way. So I've really just done word of mouth mostly. But pretty much the whole time I've been running the site, the main thing that has gotten me the most traffic and the most signups, according to Google Analytics, is the case study I posted on Drupal.org. If you have a Drupal site or service out there, do a case study, write it well. I have a picture of the case study there, and make sure you have a couple links back to your service or site, and there's a queue in the webmaster's queue or somewhere where you can submit it for a featured case study. And if it's the featured case study, then when people go to case studies on Drupal.org, it'll be the top one for, I think, a day or week or something like that. You'd be surprised how much traffic you get from that. So that was pretty much the biggest thing. The second thing was, since it was kind of a technical service for technical people, I did a post on Hacker News, a show HN post, and that it actually took the main site down for about 30 minutes the day that the link was posted, because it got on the front page. So think about doing posts on popular blogs or social media sites, and try to write it from a perspective of somebody wants to know about what you're doing, like this presentation. I want to share what I'm doing with people, and I want to try to make it worthwhile to them. Don't write about congratulating yourself or whatever. write about some things that were troublesome, some things that you figured out, some life lessons and things like that. If you include that and have a good title, like, if you ever do a show HN on Hacker News, I don't know if anybody browses there, those always get clicked. I don't know what it is, like the psychology, people are like, oh, show HN, they're showing me directly, instead of just some marketing title. Now, don't everybody spam Hacker News with show HN, you'll get downvoted. But anyway, so that was a good one. Another one that I've tried, experimented with, and I'd use a link that comes just from that blog to see the flow of people through. I've sponsored a few techie blogs. One was Stephen Hackett, the 512 pixels. He does a Mac blog, and Server Checkin kind of targets the more simplistic Apple using type fan club, I guess. And so that seemed to get me 5 or 6 signups. So you have to, when you ever do those kind of campaigns, use a special link, make sure you're tracking it in Google Analytics, see what your return was on that. For Server Checkin, that it kind of broke even with the amount that I paid for it. And I've sponsored a couple smaller blogs, like individuals who have little blogs that are trying to make it in the world. I feel like it's nice to help them out. I might get 1 or 2 signups or none, but still, it's another inbound link from a blog. You're also forming a relationship with that blogger, kind of helping them get their feet in the world. And also, one of the things that consistently brings in traffic, sometimes very negative traffic, but often a lot of traffic, is the blog. Write opinionated pieces on why you do things the way you do, or how the service is built, how it's running, things related to tech, whatever, and post them to places like Reddit or Hacker News or other communities that might be interested in it. You'd be surprised sometimes how much traffic you can get, and other times how quickly it just falls off the front page and dies. That happens about 98% of the time. You get lucky sometimes, though. But for me, I just like trying new things. This whole service was a new thing for me to play around with, and it turned out pretty well in the end. I've never had a real crisis with it, which is nice. Some of the other services I have, a server goes down, and it's like, what is going on? With Server Checkin, it's been pretty reliable, so I'm happy with it. So in summary, a lot of people on that Hacker News post were saying, why are you using Drupal? That's so stupid. You're an idiot. All this kind of stuff. Like, why didn't you use Ghost? Or why didn't you use, at the time, Go? Well, Go is still very popular. But Go is like the new hotness. And it's like, well, I could have done that in Go. It's like, yeah, well, I could have done it in any language. I could do it in COBOL. But I'm not going to. Drupal got me set up in minutes. And from then, I just customized some things, got some stuff, did some design. It made it into a useful, handy little app. And even if nobody else used it, I'd still be happy with it. So that's a win for me. But also remember, Drupal and especially PHP sometimes makes things harder than it can be. So be ready to use different tools sometimes. If you're scaling to thousands of checks per minute, Drupal and PHP will probably not be the mechanism to do that. So there's a lot of little things, like if you have a service that is responding to AJAX pings or something and you have to do 20 a second and you only have 2 servers, you might not want to do that through a Drupal bootstrap. You can do it in PHP maybe, but don't do it through Drupal necessarily. And also, with all my projects, I usually try to make do with as little as I can. My budget is basically 0 and then whatever I can scrounge. And so for Server Checkin, luckily I've been able to scrounge back enough to make it worth writing. It pays. It basically pays for my hosting for everything else. So I'm happy with that. But with Drupal and with PHP and with this attitude, you can really do a lot. And then I have a coupon code, STL14, if you want to sign up.
It does work.
It does, yeah. It's been well tested.
I've had 100% uptime for the last 54 minutes. Roughly.
Yeah. And he has helped me find a flaw that I had never tested for. The coupon codes are case sensitive right now, so I'll need to fix that. But and I did fix it for this coupon code, but I need to fix it permanently. So any discussion? I mean, I'd love to talk about this and anything else. Yeah.
If my website goes down a lot, which with HostGator has been happening recently, do I end up costing you money because of all the text messages you have to send me through Twilio?
That's a very good question. And I didn't seed that question, too. I'm surprised. So anyway, Yeah, I use Twilio, and Twilio charges 1 penny per text message in the U.S. It charges like 2 cents in Spain and 8 cents in some places. So it does actually cost me money to send those text messages, and that's why those cheap free services are not as good. They're not giving you actual text messages. They're giving you junk, and they can get blocked a lot too. Like these text messages almost always get through. It's SMS. It's very reliable. So, and the email too, I configured it so that those emails will get through. It has SPF and DKIM and all the other standards you have to deal with. But it costs me a little money, and the base plan is $15 a month. And I calculated out that even if you are in Sri Lanka, or I forget, there's one country where it's 16 cents a text message, and I have a quota of on the pricing page. It has the listing of, I think it's like 150 messages a month, or
So, yeah.
oh, 15 a year. Sorry. Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm not that expensive. Holy cow. No, $15 a year.
Cancel.
It's $1.25 a month for the base plan. It's $50 a year for 50 servers. And I've been thinking about adding another plan if people want me to someday. But I just make sure that it's, if somebody was in Sri Lanka and they used all their quota, I'd actually lose a teeny tiny bit of money, like 10 cents on their plan or something. But it averages out, and luckily most people's servers are not down as much. Most people don't use HostGator, apparently.
That's only one of my many hosting providers.
So
I have a diverse
yeah, but on the whole, I think per user, when I did the original calculation, it's probably changed now, but I would make typically $7 to $8 a person. Now, if I were a company with multiple employees and this was my only service, I'd probably want a better margin. So that's one way I can undercut some of these other companies. But it's good for me. It's happy. Yeah.
One thing I noticed after signing up for your service, you have it set up where I text a particular phone number with a code to add my phone number. Is there a reason you went with that approach versus just manually letting me?
Yeah. There's a lot of laws surrounding text messages.
Okay.
And it's interesting, too, because text messaging is changing as an industry with iMessages and BBM and Android's WhatsApp and all these other things. So it's something that I'm watching because a lot of them, like iMessages, I can't integrate with it. Apple's a closed system. I'd love to be able to. But and I know Apple doesn't want me to because a lot of people spam people through text. But because of the spam laws and things, you actually have to have a double opt-in, and you have to have a what is it called? It's a simple. If somebody texts stop, you have to cancel their number from your system forever until they sign in twice again. So if you're ever doing text message marketing, you're supposed to. And if somebody doesn't do this, you probably can't even get any money out of them. But you could probably report them to somebody and nothing will ever happen. You're supposed to make them, they have to give you your phone number, then you text them a code, and then you have to give that code back. It's a double opt-in, just like with email and MailChimp. Sign up for MailChimp marketing list. MailChimp emails you a confirmation code. You click the confirmation code, then MailChimp knows. So it's the same with text. And it's, for me, I respect that greatly because I hate getting spam texts. And, I don't want to send people spam. And if somebody could put in someone else's phone number and spam them, that's why that verification code's there, basically.
Unlike the website that I visited the other day where they scraped my email address and started emailing me.
Yeah. It's dishonest, and, it's not nice to your customers. Joel.
You mentioned with MailChimp that you use their email templates.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use the MailChimp service to send the emails, or do you send them out?
No, I just use the server itself, and so far it handles. I mean, email is a pretty lightweight as long as you're not like storing the messages and relaying millions. There's a couple caveats with email. It's the same with text too. There's some things you have to do correctly, otherwise things don't work well. You have to do like the validation of the phone number and email address, and you have to do double opt-in. You don't have to, but it's helpful because A, it gets the right email address or phone number, and B, it helps the user be assured like this is server check-in. So I had to set up DKIM, which is a standard for email signing the emails with a certificate, so that like Google and Yahoo and AOL knows it's actually from you and not from someone else. And also SPF is Sender Protection Framework, I think, something like that. Yeah, Sender Policy, whatever it is, yeah. SPF, it's like 50, 40.
That's what you put on your arms.
Yeah.
to keep it-
So, but it's basically a thing that you put in your DNS records to say these servers can send emails for me. And if any other servers send them, Yahoo will mark it as spam and AOL will delete the message, So that's important to get configured. And then additionally, you're supposed to have a reverse DNS record for your server. So your hosting provider would let you set that up so that when something looks at your IP address for the server, then it will see, oh, it's midwesternmac.com or servercheck.in or whatever the server is. There's like different levels of trust, and if you want to always get through to people's inboxes, you have to, jump through all these hoops and get it working. Anybody that's started doing email services will realize that very quickly. Luckily, in a job I had previously with Flocknote, I got to deal with a lot of these things. Flocknote, by the way, is a cool service too if you have a small organization or parish to send emails or text messages. But I got to deal with all this stuff on a large scale, millions of emails a month, and it can be complicated, but once you get it set up, it's not so bad.
So you use their HTML template, and then you send that as the HTML part of the email.
Yeah, and actually I'm using a module called Simple Mail, which is on Drupal.org. Yeah, and Simple Mail, there's a lot of email modules for Drupal, like HTML Mail and MIME Mail and all these things. In my opinion, they're all very heavy. Like, I just want to send an email with a body, a subject, and a body and a subject to somebody. And a lot of these things have like thousands of templates and thousands of integrations and all this stuff. And it's like, most of the services I've built, they're simple enough that I just want to send the emails in my code, and that's it. So I built Simple Mail to let me do that quickly and
You
easily.
did build it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, oh, there he is, Gearling guy. He's on every issue queue on all the Drupal.org.
Yes, I try.
Wow.
Seriously, I run into him all the time. I'll go, wow, that was such a helpful comment and patch. Who did? Oh, it's Jeff.
So, anyhow, yes.
Like, how many sites are you checking right now based on like the 6 or 7 Node.js servers?
There are. I have my dashboard when I logged into it now. I think there's about 350 or 400 sites, and of those, about 50 or 60 are doing every minute, and most of the rest are doing 5 minutes. So I forget. I checked like a month or two ago the number per second and per minute and per hour, but I was surprised, but I was very pleased with it. So it's like sometimes I'm surprised by my own work. It's like, yes. I wish my other services were like that. But anyway, no, and but that's the kind of, like, when I was building it, I made sure to put in a few things to monitor that kind of stuff, and it's fun. Like, it also is fun to make it a game for me. Like, when I built it, I'm like, I want to have a cool thing, and I also want to learn Node a little bit. Like, I could have done Go for that too, because Go does a lot of that asynchronous development easier. Like, PHP can do asynchronous, Java can do it. Go and Node.js, and there's some other things that they make it easy, so that's why I went with it. It's like, let's see how fast I can make this. And I made a little dashboard to show like number of signups and this kind of thing. And I'm checking the analytics. You can get obsessed with that, but I like once a month or so I'll check in and look at it. So it's but I wish I could give you a clearer answer. Yeah.
What was like the most painful part from a coding wise? Like, what part of the project did you like the least?
It was probably when I realized that all the work I did for Drupal's Q API and cron batch was for naught. Because I made it awesome. Like, I did the best I could with that, and it was not enough to do 100 servers really at 1 minute checks. I set it up with Drush, doing 16 concurrent queues, processing everything with Drupal's Q API. And Drupal is, it wasn't slow or anything. It's just the problem became each of those 16 threads in PHP on the server, and I probably could have done more with more RAM, but I started running out of RAM. Each of those, it would, with curl, it would check the server, and if the server was down, it would wait the full timeout, which at the time was 30 seconds. I've narrowed it down to 15 now. It would wait that full 30 seconds, and then it would check the next one. So, it's like, even if you had 500 checkers, if all 500 sites were down, they'd all get blocked for 30 seconds. So with Node, it takes a batch of 100, and it starts them all at the same time, and then like 15 of them will finish right away, so it stores those aside. 50 of them will be in the next second or two, and then the ones that are down are 10 seconds. But after 10 seconds, all of them are done, and I just throw them back to Drupal, and then Drupal does what it needs to with them. So small batches through Node was so much faster. So it was the biggest pain because the way I did it in QAPI was probably the best I could. And that was the biggest pain, but the biggest victory was getting it in Node. It felt so good to see like, wow, these servers are just sitting there almost idle, doing 20 times the work that the Drupal queue was, taking down that server. Anything else? Carson.
Why use a cheap like $15 a year VPS? Use a bunch of those. Why not do like 2 DigitalOcean servers, one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast?
The main thing is I wanted to have geographical diversity. So, and that's another cool lesson I've learned from Server Checkin with scalability and uptime in general, is each one of these networks that they're on, like Level 3, Cogent, Verizon, all these different networks, even the biggest name networks in the biggest data centers in New York and Atlanta and Seattle and over in UK and all that, they still have their little flaky moments. Like, if you ever have to do a project like this, you'll learn the internet is not reliable. Like, if you're looking for 100.0% uptime, that's impossible on the internet. It's literally impossible. And so instead of, if I had 2 servers or like 2 beefy servers that could do it all, even with that, I wouldn't be getting a full picture of the internet. So a lot of times 2 of those 6 or 7 or 8 servers are down, and having all these different servers from different hosting providers in different locations with different networks gives me a lot of diversity and reliability.
These are different companies you're using.
Yeah, I
Not
have
just
like,
one company.
I'll give a plug. RamNode has been awesome. RamNode is a little shop run by one guy with some helpers, and they have really cheap, insanely reliable servers, like $12 a year, $13 a year. This is for low RAM requirements. You can get little better ones that are more on par with DigitalOcean, but their support has been great. They've had better uptime for the servers I have with them. I have like 6 or 7 servers just with them for other things, and the uptime has been like 99.8, 99.9. Whereas there's
blog post on them, right? And several other services.
I might have, yeah, I think so. But I've used Linode, DigitalOcean, 123 Systems, Dime VPS, SoftLayer. With shortly, I was trying a full server, and that was not worth it to me. It's worth it for some people, but not to me. There's been a few other providers. I've used HostGator and all the other cheap ones, DreamHost and DimeHost, and But I've been starting to go to the small VPSs for little services, and then DigitalOcean or Linode for my bigger services that need a little more reliability. So, anyhow, it's 2:08. I don't even know what time is this over.
2.
Oh, hey. Sweet. Alrighty.